You need a helicopter, the woman asked with a disbelief that almost sounded like a laugh. From you? On a quiet afternoon at a small playground near Catalina Harbor, no one expected the man holding a child's backpack to become the only person who could get a powerful CEO home. Madison Caldwell had built a billion-dollar company by making impossible decisions under pressure. She had negotiated with investors, managed thousands of employees, and turned uncertainty into success. But standing on Catalina Island with her private pilot hospitalized and her flight plans suddenly gone, she discovered something money could not solve. The island that once felt peaceful now felt like a locked door. Her assistants made calls. Her team searched for options. Boats were delayed, schedules changed, and every answer seemed to lead to another dead end. Then, near the playground where families laughed beneath the California sun, a quiet man noticed her frustration. Caleb Whitmore was not dressed like someone from Madison's world. He wore simple jeans, a faded jacket, and the calm expression of someone who had learned that panic never fixes a problem. He was there with his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, helping her adjust the wheels on her small bicycle. He was just a single dad enjoying an ordinary afternoon. Or at least, that was what everyone believed. "Excuse me," Caleb said gently. "I couldn't help overhearing. Are you trying to leave the island today?" Madison looked at him carefully. She had seen many people offer help when cameras were around or when there was something to gain. But this man seemed different. "My pilot is in the hospital," she explained. "My helicopter is available, but nobody qualified is here to fly it." Caleb nodded once, as if he was considering a simple solution. "I might be able to help." For a moment, the noise of the playground seemed to fade. Madison looked at him, then at the toolbox beside his daughter's bicycle. "You might?" she repeated. Caleb remained calm. "Yes, ma'am." A small smile crossed her face, not because she wanted to be rude, but because the idea seemed impossible. A stranger at a playground offering to fly a private helicopter. Sounded like a misunderstanding. "I appreciate the confidence," Madison said politely, "but this isn't something you can just try." Caleb didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He simply reached into his wallet and removed a worn identification card. The sunlight caught the edge of the license as he held it out. Madison's expression slowly changed. The man she thought was joking was not joking at all. Behind the quiet voice, behind the simple clothes, behind the life of a devoted father, was a history she never expected. A history written in flight hours, military discipline, and years of responsibility in the sky. Caleb Whitmore had never needed people to know who he was. He had spent years choosing humility over recognition. But sometimes life brings a moment when silence must finally reveal the truth. And on that afternoon at Catalina Island, the woman who had everything discovered that the person who could save the day was the man everyone else had overlooked. If you enjoy thoughtful stories with real emotion, please subscribe and support the channel. We truly appreciate it. And for those watching, have you ever experienced something like this in your own life? Share your story in the comments. Now, let's get back to the story. The small card in Caleb Whitmore's hand carried a truth Madison Caldwell never expected to find beside a playground. She looked at the license again, then back at the quiet father standing in front of her. The afternoon breeze moved gently through the palm trees, carrying the sound of children laughing and waves touching the Catalina shoreline. Everything around them felt ordinary, but the moment was not. "You are a helicopter pilot?" Madison asked softly. Caleb gave a simple nod. "I was." She studied his face, searching for arrogance, for the confidence of someone trying to impress a stranger. But there was none. Only calm. Only humility. That was what confused her the most. People in her world usually announced their achievements before anyone asked. Caleb seemed almost uncomfortable being recognized. "How did I not know someone like you was here?" Madison whispered. Caleb looked toward his daughter Lily, who was carefully placing her bicycle beside the bench. Because most people do not ask about the person fixing a loose bicycle chain at a playground. His words were quiet, but they carried something deeper. Madison had spent years surrounded by people who wanted something from her. Investors wanted returns. Employees wanted decisions. Partners wanted opportunities. Almost everyone knew her name before they knew her heart. But Caleb did not seem interested in her title. He did not even seem impressed by it. He only saw a person who needed help. For a brief moment, Madison remembered how unusual that felt. Caleb explained that he had earned his helicopter license after years of training and had spent time as a United States Army aviator. He did not tell the story like a hero. He spoke about it like a chapter of his life that taught him patience, responsibility, and respect. Flying was never about feeling powerful, he said. It was about taking care of the people who trusted you. Madison became quiet. Those words stayed with her because they sounded different from everything she had heard in boardrooms and private meetings. They were not about winning. They were about serving. Caleb then glanced toward the distant airfield. If the helicopter is still available and properly maintained, I can take a look. We can make sure everything is ready and safe. He never promised something impossible. He never tried to be the center of attention. He simply offered what he knew. That was the kind of strength Madison had forgotten existed. As they walked toward the waiting aircraft, several people nearby watched with curiosity. They saw a successful CEO following a man who looked like an ordinary father. They did not understand what Madison was beginning to understand. Some people carry their greatest achievements quietly. Some people do not need applause to prove their worth. And sometimes, the person standing in the background is the one who has been prepared for the moment everyone else cannot handle. Caleb Whitmore had spent years living a quiet life, raising his daughter and choosing peace over recognition. But now, under the open California sky, his past and present were about to meet in a way that would change how Madison Caldwell saw him forever. The helicopter sat quietly under the California afternoon sun, its polished surface reflecting the blue sky above Catalina Island. Madison Caldwell stood nearby, watching Caleb Whitmore approach the aircraft with a calmness that felt almost impossible. A few minutes earlier, she had seen him as a kind stranger at a playground. Now, she was beginning to see something else. Not a man chasing attention. Not someone trying to prove a point. But someone who carried years of discipline behind a simple smile. You really know how to do this? Madison asked. Caleb looked at the aircraft, then back at her. Yes, ma'am. His answer was short. No hesitation. No pride. Just certainty. Madison was used to confidence that came with expensive suits, impressive titles, and carefully prepared speeches. Caleb's confidence was different. It was quiet. It came from experience. As he completed his checks, Madison noticed the details she had overlooked before. The way he moved with patience. The way he paid attention to every small thing. The way he treated every step as if responsibility mattered more than recognition. Lily watched from a nearby bench, holding her father's jacket and smiling proudly. My dad always says flying is about being responsible, she told Madison. He says people trust you with more than just a machine. Madison smiled softly. There was something powerful about hearing those words from a child who clearly admired her father, not because of what he had achieved, but because of who he was every day. Caleb had not told Lily stories about awards or accomplishments. He had taught her kindness, patience, and the importance of helping others. While waiting, Madison received another call from her executive team. They were worried. They wanted updates. They wanted solutions. They wanted control. She looked toward Caleb, who was standing quietly beside the helicopter, and realized something. The people around her were always trying to manage the world. Caleb was simply prepared to serve it. You never told me you were a military aviator, Madison said after ending the call. Caleb looked down for a moment. It was a long time ago. Most people would mention something like that. He gave a small smile. Most people want to be remembered for what they did. I just wanted to be remembered for how I treated people. The sentence stayed with her. In her world, success was measured in numbers, rankings, and achievements. But standing there on an island where her own influence could not solve her problem, Madison felt the weight of a different kind of success. The kind built quietly over years. The kind nobody could buy. As Caleb prepared for departure, the wind moved gently across the shoreline. The island that had trapped Madison only hours earlier was now becoming the place where she discovered something unexpected. Sometimes the person who appears ordinary is carrying a story far greater than anyone can see. And sometimes, the quietest people in the room are the ones who have already learned what true strength means. The moment before departure carried a strange silence. Catalina Island, once a place of frustration for Madison Caldwell, now felt completely different. The same ocean breeze moved across the shoreline. The same waves touched the harbor. But the woman standing beside the helicopter was no longer only a CEO searching for a solution. She was someone who had witnessed a kind of strength she could not measure on a balance sheet. Caleb Whitmore closed the final compartment and looked toward Madison. Everything is ready. His voice was calm, almost ordinary, as if helping a stranded CEO leave an island was simply another small act in his day. Madison looked at him carefully. You make this seem easy. Caleb shook his head. No. I just learned not to let pressure make decisions for me. Those words followed her as she stepped closer. She had spent years surrounded by people who reacted quickly, spoke loudly, and fought to control every situation. Caleb did the opposite. He listened first. He observed. Then he acted. That quiet discipline was something Madison rarely saw. Before they prepared to leave, Lily ran toward her father with a small smile. Dad, are you coming home soon? Caleb knelt beside her. Of course. I promised we would finish that bicycle this evening. Madison watched the moment without saying anything. In her world, important people were often too busy for small promises. Meetings replaced dinners. Deadlines replaced conversations. But Caleb treated a simple promise to his daughter like it was the most important responsibility he had. For the first time in a long time, Madison wondered if she had mistaken success for fulfillment. She is lucky to have you, Madison said quietly. Caleb smiled. I think I am lucky to have her. The answer surprised her. Many people she knew talked about family as something they managed between business obligations. Caleb spoke about his daughter as a gift. As they prepared to depart, a few island workers gathered nearby, curious about the unexpected pilot who had appeared at exactly the right moment. They had seen the expensive clothes, the important phone calls, and the stress on Madison's face earlier. Now they saw something else. A successful woman trusting a quiet father who never asked for anything in return. The helicopter began its careful preparation, and Madison felt a small uncertainty rise inside her. Not fear, but reflection. She was about to leave the island because of a man she would have ignored in any other circumstance. A man who did not have a famous name. A man who did not introduce himself with achievements. A man who simply stepped forward when someone needed help. As Caleb guided the helicopter into position, Madison looked out toward the endless Pacific horizon. She realized that some people carry their greatest stories quietly, hidden beneath ordinary days and simple routines. And sometimes, the world has to create an impossible moment just to reveal what was there all along. Caleb Whitmore was not looking for recognition. He was not searching for admiration. He was only doing what he had always done. Helping when he could. Serving when needed. And that was exactly why his quiet act would leave a lasting mark on the woman sitting beside him. The helicopter lifted gently above Catalina Island, and for a moment, Madison Caldwell forgot about everything waiting for her on the mainland. The endless meetings. The unanswered messages. The Expectations that followed her everywhere. Below them, the island became smaller, the harbor turning into a quiet line along the coastline. Beside her, Caleb Whitmore remained focused, calm, and completely present. He was not trying to impress her. He was not trying to prove that he was extraordinary. He was simply doing what he had promised. Madison watched him carefully. "You really do not act like someone who used to fly for the military," she said. Caleb glanced briefly in her direction. "What do you mean?" "Most people with your background would want everyone to know." Caleb gave a small smile. "Maybe I spent enough time around people who were more interested in doing the job than talking about it." The answer stayed with her. In her world, achievements were displayed everywhere. Company names on buildings. Awards on walls. Headlines celebrating success. But Caleb carried his accomplishments like they were something private. Something meaningful, not something to collect. As the helicopter continued across the California coastline, Madison noticed the difference between confidence and pride. She had met many powerful people who needed others to recognize their importance. Caleb seemed comfortable without recognition. That was rare. "Why did you leave?" she asked after a quiet moment. Caleb looked ahead, his expression thoughtful. "The military gave me a lot. It taught me discipline, responsibility, and the importance of protecting the people who trust you. But eventually, I realized I wanted a different kind of life." Madison listened carefully. "A different kind?" "A quieter one," he answered. "I wanted to be there for my daughter. I wanted her to know me as her father, not just as someone who was always away chasing the next mission." Madison looked down at the ocean below. The answer felt strangely powerful. She had built her entire identity around ambition. Around reaching the next goal. Around proving she belonged among the most successful people in the country. But Caleb had walked away from recognition to choose something more personal. Something more human. When they approached the mainland, Madison's phone began filling with notifications again. Her team was waiting. Her company needed her. The world was returning to normal. But something inside her had changed during that short flight. Before landing, she looked at Caleb and said, "I owe you more than payment." Caleb shook his head. "You do not owe me anything." Most people would have taken advantage of this situation. "Maybe," he replied. "But helping someone should not depend on what they can give back." The words were simple, but Madison felt their meaning. She had spent years surrounded by transactions. Every conversation had a purpose. Every relationship had expectations. Yet this man had offered help without asking who she was, how much money she had, or what she could do for him. When the helicopter finally touched down, the people waiting nearby expected to see a CEO stepping out with a professional pilot. Instead, they saw a quiet single father completing a simple act of kindness. And Madison Caldwell, a woman who thought she understood the world, realized she had just met someone who reminded her of something she had forgotten. True strength does not demand attention. It earns respect quietly, one choice at a time. The moment Caleb Whitmore stepped away from the helicopter, the world around Madison Caldwell changed in a way she did not expect. The people waiting near the landing area saw a successful CEO returning from an unexpected journey, but Madison saw something much more important. She saw a man who had no interest in being admired. A man who had helped her without knowing her name, her company, or the power she carried. "You are really just going back to your normal day after all of this?" Madison asked as they walked away from the aircraft. Caleb looked toward the parking area where Lily was waiting with her bicycle. "That is usually how life works," he said. "Most important moments do not come with announcements." Madison smiled slightly, but she understood there was truth behind those words. Her entire life had been built around announcements. Product launches. Business victories. Public recognition. Every achievement had a spotlight attached to it. But Caleb's greatest qualities existed in silence. Later that afternoon, Madison found herself sitting with her executive team, listening to reports and updates. The familiar world returned quickly. People discussed schedules, investments, and upcoming decisions. Everything sounded normal. Yet Madison felt different. She kept thinking about the man who had stood on Catalina Island with nothing to prove. Who exactly was he? One of her advisors asked after hearing the story. Madison looked through the information her assistant had gathered. The details were simple. Caleb Whitmore. Former United States Army aviator. Licensed helicopter pilot. Father. Community volunteer. Nothing about the profile matched the image most people would expect from someone with his background. There were no headlines. No interviews. No attempts to build a reputation. Just years of quietly living with purpose. Madison found herself wondering why someone with such experience would choose a simple life. That evening, she searched for more information. She learned about his dedication to his daughter, his involvement in local community programs, and the careful way he had rebuilt his life after leaving the military. The more she learned, the more she realized something important. Caleb was not hiding because he was ashamed of his past. He was quiet because he was at peace with it. The next morning, Madison returned to the playground near Catalina Harbor before leaving the area. She found Caleb helping Lily adjust the handlebars on her bicycle. It was the same scene she had witnessed before, but now she saw it differently. A powerful CEO could recognize another kind of success. A success measured not by wealth, but by character. "I wanted to thank you again," Madison said. Caleb smiled. "You already did." She shook her head gently. "No. I mean truly thank you." Caleb paused and looked at her. "Why?" Madison thought for a moment. "Because you reminded me that not every valuable thing comes with a price tag." The ocean breeze moved quietly through the trees around them. Caleb did not respond immediately. He simply nodded. Sometimes the deepest lessons did not need long explanations. They only needed someone willing to listen. And for the first time in years, Madison Caldwell was not looking at a person through the lens of success or status. She was looking at someone through the lens of humanity. She had spent her life searching for exceptional people in powerful places. But the man who changed her perspective was someone she almost walked past without noticing. The days after Catalina Island felt strangely different for Madison Caldwell. Her schedule was still full. Her company still demanded decisions. Her phone still carried hundreds of messages waiting for answers. Yet something had shifted inside her. She found herself noticing the quiet moments she used to ignore. The simple conversations. The people who worked without recognition. The kindness that existed without expecting anything in return. And often, her thoughts returned to Caleb Whitmore. You cannot understand someone by looking at what they have, Madison told herself one evening while reviewing company reports. It was a lesson she never expected to learn from a man she first believed was just a helpful stranger at a playground. Meanwhile, Caleb returned to his normal routine. His mornings began early, preparing breakfast for Lily and making sure she was ready for school. His afternoons were filled with small responsibilities that most people never noticed. Fixing things around the neighborhood. Helping a friend with repairs. Spending time with his daughter. Nothing about his life looked extraordinary from the outside. But Madison now understood that ordinary appearances could hide extraordinary character. A few weeks later, she visited the community center near Caleb's neighborhood. She had heard about a local program that helped families and children, and she wanted to contribute. When she arrived, she saw Caleb organizing supplies with other volunteers. He looked exactly the same as before. No expensive clothing. No attempt to stand out. Just the same calm expression and the same willingness to help. "You really do this every week?" Madison asked. Caleb looked surprised to see her. "Whenever I can." "Why?" she asked. He paused for a moment. Because someone helped me when I needed it. I think kindness is something you pass forward. Madison looked around the room. There were people working together, children smiling, and neighbors supporting each other. It was not a boardroom. It was not a place where decisions were measured by profit. But somehow, it felt more meaningful than many places she had known. You know, Madison said quietly, most people would have used that moment on Catalina Island to change their life. Caleb smiled. Maybe. But I was not trying to change mine. Then what were you trying to do? She asked. Caleb looked toward Lily, who was drawing at a nearby table. Just help someone who needed help. The simplicity of his answer stayed with Madison. She realized Caleb was not pretending to be humble. He truly saw kindness as a responsibility, not an opportunity. That was what made him different. In a world where people often searched for advantages, Caleb searched for ways to make things better. Before leaving, Madison thanked him again. But this time, it was not just gratitude for a flight. It was respect for the person behind the action. She had spent years believing success meant reaching the highest position in the room. Caleb showed her that sometimes the strongest person was the one who never needed to prove they belonged there. And somewhere between the quiet playground and the busy world she returned to, Madison Caldwell began to understand that true greatness was not always found under bright lights. Sometimes it was found in a father fixing a bicycle, a neighbor offering help, and a man who carried a remarkable past while choosing a peaceful present. Several months passed after the day Madison Caldwell met Caleb Whitmore on Catalina Island, but the memory never truly left her. In the middle of crowded meetings and endless decisions, she often found herself thinking about a simple sentence he had said. Helping someone should not depend on what they can give back. It was a thought that seemed ordinary at first, yet the more she reflected on it, the more she realized how rare it had become in her world. One afternoon, Madison sat in her office overlooking the city skyline, surrounded by everything she had built. The glass walls, the awards, the company achievements, all represented years of dedication. But for the first time, she wondered if success was only about what people could see. How many people know the real story behind you? She asked Caleb when she later visited the community center. He looked confused. What do you mean? Madison smiled. Your past. Your experience. Everything you have done. Caleb looked down for a moment. There is not much to tell. Madison knew that was not true. She had already learned pieces of his history. She knew about his years as a United States Army aviator. She knew about the countless hours of training and responsibility that came with that role. She knew he had once lived a life completely different from the quiet routine he had chosen. But Caleb never spoke about it unless someone asked. Even then, he shared only what was necessary. Most people would build an entire identity around something like that, Madison said. Maybe, Caleb replied. But that chapter ended. Do you ever miss it? She asked. Caleb looked toward the children playing nearby. I miss some people. I miss the purpose. But I do not miss needing everyone to know who I was. Madison became quiet. She understood then that Caleb was not running away from his past. He had simply learned that a person's value did not disappear when the uniform was gone. His identity was not defined by what he had accomplished before. It was defined by how he treated people now. That evening, Madison invited Caleb and Lily to a small company event focused on community support. Many executives expected her to arrive with a famous guest or a business leader. Instead, she arrived with a quiet father and his daughter. Some people were curious. Others wondered who he was. Madison noticed the reactions but did not explain immediately. She simply watched as Caleb spoke with employees, listened to their stories, and treated everyone with the same respect regardless of their position. The room slowly changed. People who first saw an ordinary man began to see something different. They saw patience. They saw kindness. They saw someone who carried a lifetime of experience without needing recognition. Later that evening, Madison stood beside Caleb and said, "You know, people spend years trying to become impressive." Caleb smiled. "And what do you think?" She looked around the room filled with people who had been touched by a simple conversation or a small act of kindness. "I think the most impressive people are sometimes the ones trying the hardest not to be noticed." Caleb did not answer. He only smiled. Because he understood something Madison was just beginning to learn. True strength does not announce itself. It quietly appears when someone chooses dignity, compassion, and grace even when nobody is watching. 1 year after the unexpected day on Catalina Island, Madison Caldwell found herself standing in a place she never expected to visit. It was not a corporate office. It was not a luxury conference room filled with executives. It was a small community park where children played, families shared conversations, and ordinary moments carried extraordinary meaning. Across the field, Caleb Whitmore was helping Lily prepare for a school event. He was laughing quietly, adjusting decorations, and making sure every child felt included. Madison watched from a distance and smiled. The man who had once appeared invisible to her had become one of the most memorable people she had ever known. "You know what is interesting?" Madison said when she finally walked over. Caleb looked up. "What is that?" "When I first met you, I thought you were the person who needed help." Caleb smiled gently. "And now?" Madison looked around the park. "Now I realize I was the one who needed a reminder." The two stood quietly for a moment. The world continued around them. Children laughed. A light breeze moved through the trees. Somewhere nearby, a parent called a child's name. It was a simple scene, but Madison understood the value of simple things now. Over the past year, she had changed the way she led her company. She encouraged her employees to focus not only on results, but also on people. She created programs to support families and communities. She often told her team that success without compassion was incomplete. Many people wondered what caused such a change in one of the most successful CEOs in the country. Madison never gave a complicated answer. She simply said, "I met someone who reminded me what strength really looks like." Caleb never considered himself a teacher. He never thought he had transformed anyone's life. He was just a man who made a choice when someone needed help. That was always enough for him. Later that afternoon, Madison watched Caleb and Lily ride their bicycles along the path. She thought about how different their lives seemed at first. A CEO surrounded by opportunity. A single father living a quiet life. Two people from completely different worlds. Yet somehow, one small act of kindness connected them. Caleb had shown her that dignity did not come from a title. It came from character. Respect did not come from wealth. It came from the way someone treated others when nobody was watching. As the sun began to set, Madison walked beside Caleb toward the parking area. "Do you ever think about how different things would have been if we never met?" she asked. Caleb looked toward the golden sky. "Maybe. But I think some moments find us when they are supposed to." Madison smiled. She knew he was right. The most important changes in life rarely arrive with attention or celebration. Sometimes they arrive quietly, through a stranger's kindness, a father's patience, or a person willing to help without expecting anything in return. Caleb Whitmore never searched for recognition. He never needed the world to know his story. But in the hearts of those who met him, his story remained. Because true heroes are not always the ones standing in the spotlight. Sometimes they are the ones standing quietly in the background, choosing kindness again and again. And sometimes, all it takes is one moment for the world to finally notice. Thank you for being here until the very end. Your support truly means a lot to this channel. Before you leave, tell us, are you watching as a husband, wife, mom, dad, or just someone who enjoys stories like this? Share your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, Please subscribe for more stories every day.